"You should have stayed home, soldier boy." Those words echoed in my mind the moment I stepped off the transport plane, the Texas sun hitting my face like a spotlight on a stage I hadn't wanted to return to so soon. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and at the end don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10, enjoy the story. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked toward the old ranch house, the same place my grandfather had built with his own hands, a place that smelled of cedar, earth, and the faint tang of motor oil from years of maintaining the family vehicles. I hadn't seen it in over 6 months while deployed overseas, months filled with dusty roads, screaming engines, and the endless hum of a helicopter rotor, but I had imagined this moment countless times, each scenario ending with the smell of fresh-cut grass and the cool breeze of dawn wrapping around the house. Instead, what I found made the air feel heavy, almost tangible, like walking into a storm I hadn't expected. A sleek white SUV sat in the driveway, perfectly parked, the scent of expensive leather and perfume wafting through the air, cutting through the warm morning smell of soil and dew. Brenda Whitmore stood next to it, her heels clicking against the stone path, a wide smile plastered across her face that didn't reach her eyes, the kind of smile that carried the weight of entitlement and the thrill of control. I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from a summer asphalt, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your instincts sharpen. My hand brushed the cold steel of my keys in my pocket as I assessed the scene, noticing the official-looking documents in her hand, stamped and sealed, meant to intimidate and assert authority over the property that had been in my family for generations. The wind carried the faint whistle of a passing train, a reminder of the world moving forward while I had been standing still, enforcing justice thousands of miles away, only to return to find my home treated as a chess piece in someone else's game. I inhaled the air, tasting the faint copper tang of metal from the mailboxes and the dry dust. Clinging to the rocks along the path, my mind replaying every lesson in patience, observation, and strategy one had learned during my tours, every moment training for control, timing, and precision. Her voice cut through the silence, sweet and sharp at once. "Lucas, the HOA has decided you're in violation of community regulations, and the property must be vacated immediately." The words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate, like the swing of a pendulum measuring each heartbeat. I noticed the small details, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the sunlight, the way her hand rested casually on the documents as if they were a weapon, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the dust of the driveway, creating an almost tangible aura of confrontation. The gravel beneath my boots shifted as I stepped closer, each movement deliberate, the sound crunching loud in the quiet morning, as if even the ground were aware of the tension. I could see the edges of the papers trembling slightly in her grip, a subtle crack in the armor she projected, though her posture remained rigid, commanding the space in front of the house like she owned not just the land, but every moment unfolding. The mailbox flag rattled in the breeze, the faint scent of wildflowers from the side garden mixing with the industrial tang of asphalt, creating a sensory landscape that mirrored the conflict, sharp and layered, demanding attention. I stood there, still and controlled, every sense heightened, the taste of adrenaline metallic on my tongue, feeling the subtle vibration from a distant lawn mower in the neighborhood, the hum of early morning traffic far down the country road, each sound amplifying the awareness of being watched, tested, and challenged. My grandfather's old oak tree cast long shadows across the front yard, and I traced the knots in the bark with my eyes, remembering promises, lessons, and the quiet strength embedded in the very wood that had survived decades of storms and heat, an anchor in the chaos of this confrontation. Every detail mattered, the uneven stones on the path, the faint scratch where the cat had sharpened its claws, the delicate shift of sunlight across the windows, each a potential clue, each a piece of the puzzle I would use to turn the situation around. And as I breathed in, steadying the rhythm of my pulse against the tension, I reminded myself of what I had learned in the field: observation, patience, and understanding the landscape were as critical here as they had been in the deserts and mountains far from home. The sun climbed higher, the shadows shortening, and Brenda's smile faltered for the briefest instant, a crack in the armor, a whisper of vulnerability hidden beneath the layers of authority she had built. And in that moment, I knew the battle wasn't about force or anger, it was about strategy, law, and timing, and I was already steps ahead, quietly calculating the moves that would ensure justice, measured, deliberate, and inevitable. The house felt familiar yet foreign as I stepped through the front door, the polished wooden floorboards creaking under my boots, each sound echoing in the quiet morning. I ran my hand along the banister, feeling the smooth grain of oak worn by decades of use, remembering how my father had polished it every Sunday afternoon, filling the air with the faint scent of lemon oil and wood polish. The kitchen smelled faintly of brewed coffee and fresh bread from the local bakery, mingling with the subtle earthy aroma of the potted plants by the window, a combination that anchored me in the life I had paused for months overseas. My eyes scanned the living room, noting the framed photographs on the mantel, black and white images of my grandparents and father, their expressions proud and steadfast, a silent reminder of the lineage I carried forward. I moved toward the study, the floor beneath my feet lined with rugs worn thin at the edges, the colors muted but comforting, a testament to years of family use and care. On the desk, neatly stacked documents caught my attention, a combination of HOA letters, property assessments, and permits that hinted at the conflict I had stepped into. The sunlight streaming through the window highlighted the dust motes dancing in the air, each particle suspended for a moment before drifting slowly to the floor, a quiet contrast to the tension. Building outside. I paused, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant chirping of sparrows, taking in the subtle sounds that reminded me that life continued, that the world moved at its own pace even when challenges loomed. The study smelled faintly of ink and paper, a scent that immediately transported me back to late nights reviewing maps and property records, the meticulous notes I had kept during deployment becoming my silent allies in understanding what had transpired in my absence. I ran my fingers over the embossed leather cover of my legal binder, feeling the weight of preparation and knowledge accumulated over years, a tangible reminder that I was not powerless despite the audacity of the situation. From the window, I could see the driveway stretching out toward the street, the white SUV parked in a manner that spoke of ownership claimed and authority asserted, a visual challenge that contrasted sharply with the openness of the land it rested upon. I inhaled deeply, the morning air carrying faint hints of wildflowers and freshly cut grass, grounding me, sharpening my focus, preparing me for the steps I would take next. Every detail mattered, the angle of the sunlight, the faint scratch on the window sill, the slight tilt of the mailbox, all were clues and tools in the strategy forming in my mind. I allowed myself a brief moment to appreciate the calm, knowing that this pause was the quiet before the storm, the mental preparation that would allow me to act decisively and lawfully. I could hear the subtle creak of the door hinges as the house settled, a reminder that even structures age and shift, but foundations, whether of family, law, or principle, remain steadfast when maintained with care and attention. My eyes lingered on the certificate of property ownership framed on the wall, its edges slightly faded, the ink still crisp, a symbol of rights and responsibilities I had inherited and was ready to defend. The distant bark of a neighbor's dog carried across the yard, punctuating the morning with familiar, mundane sounds that contrasted the extraordinary challenge of confronting authority armed with documents, law, and clarity of purpose. I ran my hand along the edge of the desk, feeling the smoothness of the wood beneath my fingers, centering myself, every sensory detail anchoring me in the certainty that knowledge, patience, and strategic observation would guide the actions I was about to take. The quiet persistence of the house, the scent of paper, the sunlight through the windows, and the faint buzz of life outside combined to form a tableau that was steady, controlled, and ready, a space where preparation met opportunity, where observation led to action, and where patience was as much a weapon as any law or document in my possession. The morning sun climbed higher over the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard and illuminating every detail with startling clarity. The driveway, perfectly lined with crushed granite, sparkled in the light, yet the presence of the white SUV remained a stark reminder of the challenge I faced. I stepped onto the porch, feeling the worn wooden planks shift slightly beneath my weight, each creak a subtle punctuation in the silence. The air was cool but carried the faint warmth of the sun, mingling with the scent of cut grass and the faint tang of motor oil from the maintenance shed at the back of the property. I noticed the subtle imperfections on the exterior of the house, the small chips in the paint near the corners of the windows, the weathered shingles along the roofline, each a testament to years of care and neglect, evidence that the house had endured seasons and storms with quiet resilience. From the window, I could see the garden, a mixture of wildflowers and carefully tended plants, the colors vivid against the green of the lawn, a contrast to the stark control Brenda sought to impose. I ran my hand along the edge of the railing, feeling the smoothness of the wood under my fingers, grounding myself in the physical reality of the property that had been under my family's stewardship for decades. Each sound was amplified, the distant hum of a lawn mower, the occasional chirp of birds, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, reminding me that life persisted beyond the tension, that the world continued to turn even as authority was challenged. I made my way to the side of the house where the mailbox stood, noting the slight tilt and the faint scratches along its metal surface, evidence of minor impacts over the years, a detail I committed to memory as a part of the narrative of care and ownership. Inside, the study beckoned, the room filled with the scent of paper, ink, and polished wood, the desk meticulously organized with property records, correspondence, and legal documents stacked in precise order. I traced the edges of the legal binder with my fingers, feeling the weight and texture of the covers and the crispness of the pages within, each document a tool, each notation a piece of the strategy forming in my mind. The sun glinted off the window panes, casting patterns of light across the floor and walls, drawing attention to the details that mattered, the angle of the shadows, the clarity of the light, the subtle imperfections that could tell a story if observed carefully. I walked slowly, deliberately, through the hallway, noting the arrangement of photographs, the slight fading of colors, the way the frames captured moments of family, history, and continuity. Each element reinforced my sense of place, my connection to the property, and the legitimacy of my presence. Outside, the gravel shifted under the weight of my steps, each crunch a rhythmic beat that matched the pulse of focus and patience building within me. I paused at the edge of the porch, inhaling deeply, the cool air filling my lungs, tasting the faint metallic hint of the nails and screws embedded in the structure, the earthy aroma of the soil beneath the flower beds, the delicate sweetness of morning blooms carried on the breeze. Every observation, every sensory input, every detail of sight, sound, and smell was catalogued, stored, and prepared to be used as evidence, as a means to assert authority, and to plan the next steps with precision. The quiet of the house, the brightness of the morning, and the presence of every minor detail created a canvas upon which strategy would be executed, ensuring that the response would be deliberate, lawful, and undeniable in its impact, transforming observation into action, and preparation into the certainty of justice. Brenda stepped forward, holding the stack of documents with the authority of someone convinced that possession equaled power, her heels clicking deliberately against the stone path as she positioned herself on the edge of the driveway like a commander surveying her territory. I watched her carefully, noting the slight crease in her brow and the tightness around her eyes, small tells that hinted at both confidence and underlying strain, subtle cracks in the armor of entitlement she projected. The morning air carried the aroma of freshly mown grass, mingled with the faint scent of asphalt from the road beyond the property line, grounding me even as the tension in the air thickened. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant drone of a lawn mower in a neighboring yard, each ordinary sound sharply contrasted by the extraordinary claim being made before me. I moved closer, my footsteps soft on the gravel, deliberate and measured, allowing the rhythm of my presence to assert itself without haste. Her voice, controlled and saccharine, cut through the ambient sounds, detailing violations and deadlines, each word meant to intimidate, to create urgency, to suggest that her authority was absolute. I responded with silence, letting the weight of my observation and the evidence in my mind accumulate, each detail noted, the angle of the sun on the windows, the shadow cast by the SUV, the way the papers shifted in her grip. Inside the house, the desk and study reflected decades of care and documentation, stacks of permits, correspondence, and property records meticulously arranged, evidence of stewardship and preparation that had been maintained in my absence, silently waiting for this confrontation to provide context. I ran my fingers along the edge of the legal binder, feeling the smooth leather and crisp pages, the texture a reminder of the careful strategy and forethought that would inform every next step. The garden beyond the window caught my eye, the colors of the flowers vibrant against the green lawn, the deliberate placement of each plant reflecting a history of care and investment that contrasted sharply with the assertion of power outside. The air smelled faintly of flowers, earth, and the lingering trace of morning dew, a sensory backdrop to the unfolding situation. I observed the slight tilt of the mailbox post, the subtle scratches on the window sills, the weathered shingles along the roofline, each a testament to history and persistence, each a subtle reminder that claims to authority require context and legitimacy. The quiet hum of life continued beyond the immediate tension, the soft flutter of birds, the distant murmur of traffic, the wind threading through the trees, creating a canvas where observation and patience could be translated into precise action. Every step I took, every detail I recorded, served as preparation, an invisible infrastructure of knowledge and awareness that would allow the enforcement of rights, the assertion of authority, and the eventual clarification of justice. The house settled around me with faint creaks and shifts, the smell of polished wood and paper filling the space, a constant reminder that preparation and understanding, patience and attention, would ultimately shape the outcome, guiding me toward a resolution that was deliberate, lawful, and inevitable. The letters Brenda had left behind on the kitchen counter were neat, crisp, and intentionally conspicuous, each envelope marked with bold, official stamps that declared urgency and consequence. I picked up the first one, feeling the weight of the paper between my fingers, the smooth texture offering a quiet contrast to the tense energy lingering in the room. The words inside were formulaic, legalistic, filled with dates, fines, and references to regulations that demanded immediate compliance, each sentence constructed to assert control, to impose structure, and to create the illusion of authority. I read through them slowly, each line reinforcing the pattern of overreach, the meticulous attention to detail serving her ambition to dominate the narrative, yet also providing me with insight into her methods and her expectations. I moved to the desk and opened my legal binder, extracting the sections of law, property rights documentation, and family deeds that had been carefully organized over years, the edges of the papers slightly worn from frequent consultation, the ink crisp and authoritative. The smell of paper and leather filled the study, grounding me, reminding me that preparation and knowledge were as vital here as in any field operation. I laid out the letters, the deeds, and the legal precedents side by side, tracing connections, noting inconsistencies, and identifying gaps in her assertions that could be used strategically. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and freshly cut grass, a sensory backdrop that provided clarity and focus, sharpening attention to detail and enhancing situational awareness. Each sound, each subtle shift in the environment, from the distant hum of a tractor to the soft tapping of a bird against the window, became part of the spatial and temporal map I was constructing, understanding not just the documents, but the landscape, the timing, and the context in which the confrontation existed. I noted the placement of the SUV in the driveway, the angle of the sunlight reflecting off its polished surface, and the shadows it cast across the lawn, each observation contributing to a comprehensive mental model that would guide the next steps. My mind methodically catalogued evidence, laying the foundation for a strategy that combined patience, legal insight, and precise timing, ensuring that when action was taken it would be irrefutable, measured, and fully supported by law. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to appreciate the subtle interplay of light, smell, and sound that surrounded the house, each sensory input reinforcing a sense of control and readiness. The patterns in her letters revealed predictability, a reliance on procedure over substance, creating opportunities for intervention through legitimate, documented means. I reviewed the property surveys, zoning maps, and prior correspondence, each element a potential leverage point, each piece a clue in the orchestration of a lawful response. By the time the morning sun had climbed to mid-height, the framework for action was complete, every detail noted, every contingency anticipated, and every aspect of the environment integrated into a plan that would assert rightful authority with clarity, precision, and the certainty that knowledge, preparation, and timing would ensure an outcome where fairness and justice prevailed without haste, conflict, or misstep. I spent the next few hours meticulously reviewing every document, cross-referencing property deeds, zoning maps, and prior correspondence to ensure that no detail would escape notice. The sunlight streamed through the study window, casting sharp lines across the floor and illuminating the edges of the papers, highlighting the official seals and embossed lettering that attested to their authenticity. I lined up the letters from Brenda beside my legal binder, each envelope a challenge, each sentence a calculated assertion meant to intimidate, yet within them lay the openings I had been waiting for. The faint smell of leather and paper mingled with the morning breeze wafting through the open window, carrying the scent of dew-soaked grass and pine from the surrounding yard, grounding me as I worked. I traced the property lines on the maps, noting the exact boundaries, the access points, and the historical easements that had been granted decades ago, some predating the formation of the homeowners association, each annotation a potential leverage point in the unfolding situation. Every corner of the study, from the polished wooden desk to the well-worn bookshelves lined with legal reference guides, became part of the operational space, a mental map of resources and strategies that I could deploy. I organized the documents by type, highlighting inconsistencies, recording dates and signatures, and ensuring that every possible procedural misstep Brenda might have relied upon was noted for strategic advantage. Outside, the light shifted as clouds moved across the sky, shadows dancing across the lawn, the subtle sound of leaves rustling in the wind adding rhythm to the careful choreography of preparation. I noted the placement of each object in the yard, from the mailbox to the decorative stone pathway, integrating the physical environment into the mental map of action, recognizing how positioning and observation could influence the perception of authority and control. The meticulous cataloging of evidence extended to the digital domain as well, with photographs, scanned documents, and time-stamped records carefully stored and indexed, creating a multi-layered archive that could be accessed and presented seamlessly at the appropriate moment. The quiet hum of life beyond the property, the distant sound of birds, and the occasional vehicle passing down the country road provided a background cadence, reminding me that while the confrontation felt immediate and intense, it existed within a broader, measured context of procedure and law. I paused briefly to review my notes, the weight of preparation tangible in the steady rhythm of my breathing and the deliberate pace of my movements. Each action, each observation, and each document was part of a comprehensive strategy, a deliberate orchestration designed to convert awareness and knowledge into lawful authority and to ensure that when the moment of confrontation arrived, the outcome would be precise, irrefutable, and aligned with the principles of justice and proper stewardship. As the morning deepened and the sun climbed higher, I felt a growing confidence in the structure I had built, a quiet certainty that the careful assembly of evidence, understanding of the legal framework, and detailed observation of the physical space would allow for decisive action, turning preparation into resolution, and ensuring that law and fairness would prevail without haste or error. With the evidence meticulously organized and the patterns in Brenda's documents clearly outlined, I moved toward the front porch once more, feeling the sun's warmth on my back as it climbed higher in the sky. Each step on the gravel driveway was deliberate, measured, a rhythm that reflected the strategy and patience cultivated over months of observation and preparation. I surveyed the property again, noting the angle of the sunlight, the shadows of the trees stretching across the lawn, and the placement of the SUV, all elements that could influence perception and reinforce the authority I was about to assert. My eyes caught the slight inconsistencies in the documents. She had left, the misdated forms, the minor procedural oversights, and the lack of proper notarization on certain notices, details that transformed intimidation into vulnerability. I held the legal binder in my hands, feeling the texture of the leather and the weight of the carefully stacked pages within, each sheet representing knowledge, preparation, and a lawful path to resolution. From the corner of the yard, the wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, their colors vivid against the green of the lawn, a reminder of the life and continuity the property represented, grounding me and lending clarity to the decisions ahead. The morning air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass, mingled with the earthy aroma of the soil and the faint trace of cedar from the nearby shed, each detail sharpening awareness and focus, heightening the senses in preparation for action. I approached the edge of the porch, placing the binder on the railing to review the sequence of correspondence and evidence one final time, the subtle rustle of papers a quiet accompaniment to the ambient sounds of the neighborhood, birds calling, leaves rustling, a distant engine humming along the country road. The precision of the observations, the careful cataloging of time-stamped records, and the detailed mapping of property lines and legal precedents formed a comprehensive framework for response. Each sound, each scent, and each visual cue was integrated into a mental model that would guide every action with accuracy and authority. I noticed the slight tilt of the mailbox post, the way the sunlight glinted off the windows, and the shadows cast by the porch railing, details that could reinforce perception, credibility, and control. Stepping back, I allowed a moment of stillness, a pause to center and breathe, acknowledging the cumulative effort of preparation, strategy, and observation that had brought me to this point. The house itself seemed to settle around me, wooden boards shifting subtly, the scent of polished surfaces and paper filling the space, reinforcing a sense of permanence and legitimacy. I understood that the forthcoming actions needed precision, timing, and unwavering adherence to law and procedure, ensuring that when the moment came, the response would be clear, decisive, and fully grounded in authority and justice. Each minute spent cataloging, observing, and preparing created a foundation where law, patience, and careful strategy converged, enabling a response that would assert rightful control, clarify boundaries, and resolve the challenge imposed without haste, speculation, or misstep. The rhythm of my movements, the quiet persistence of the house, the ambient sounds of the environment, and the meticulous evidence prepared all aligned to create a singular focus, a lawful, inevitable, and thorough assertion of authority that would bring clarity, resolution, and rightful stewardship back to the property. The moment to act arrived quietly, without fanfare, yet it carried the weight of careful planning and lawful authority. I stepped onto the porch, the binder firmly in hand, the sunlight casting crisp shadows across the wooden floor, illuminating the edges of the documents that represented clarity, preparation, and legitimacy. Brenda, standing near the SUV, glanced up as I approached, her smile faltering for a brief moment, a subtle acknowledgement that the dynamic had shifted even before words were exchanged. I opened the binder, spreading the documents across the railing so that each piece of evidence, each record, each carefully documented legal precedent was visible, a tangible manifestation of preparation and authority. The air carried the combined sense of polished wood, fresh-cut grass, and the faint aroma of ink, creating a sensory environment that heightened focus and presence. I began to outline the sequence of events and evidence, my voice calm, deliberate, and measured, articulating each discrepancy, procedural error, and oversight with precision, allowing the logic and legality of each point to stand on its own. The hum of life beyond the property, birds calling, leaves rustling, a distant tractor engine, served as a rhythmic counterpoint to the measured cadence of my explanation, grounding the moment in reality and observation. Each detail, from the positioning of the SUV to the shadows on the driveway, the subtle tilts of the mailbox post, and the alignment of documents, was part of the presentation, reinforcing the legitimacy of the argument and the authority it represented. Brenda listened, her posture shifting subtly as the clarity of the evidence and the careful structure of the presentation dismantled the foundation of her previous confidence. I moved through the binder systematically, tracing property lines, citing historical easements, and referencing statutory regulations, each point linking directly to observable reality, turning the abstract threat of eviction into a clear, legal impossibility. The sunlight reflected off the pages, highlighting embossed seals and official stamps, underscoring the authenticity and rigor of the preparation, reinforcing the inevitability of the outcome without requiring force or confrontation. Outside, the yard and surrounding landscape framed the scene, the patterns of light and shadow emphasizing the contrast between the careful stewardship of the property and the attempts at overreach that had prompted this resolution. Each observation, every recorded detail, and every carefully documented discrepancy converged to create a comprehensive, irrefutable demonstration of lawful authority and rightful ownership. The moment was measured, deliberate, and controlled. There was no haste, no confusion, only the quiet clarity of preparation meeting execution. As I closed the binder, the finality of the presentation resonated in the air, each element of the environment, every sensory input, and every carefully arranged document contributing to an unmistakable message. Authority, when exercised with knowledge, patience, and precision, is decisive, inevitable, and unmistakable. Brenda's stance softened, her earlier certainty replaced by acknowledgement of the legitimacy and thoroughness of the response, and the quiet satisfaction of law and order prevailing settled over the property like a tangible presence, completing the moment of strategic, lawful resolution. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the property, illuminating every detail with a clarity that seemed almost deliberate, as if nature itself acknowledged the resolution of the tension that had defined the morning. I stood on the porch, the legal binder resting on the railing beside me, feeling the weight of certainty and preparation that had carried me through each stage of this confrontation. The yard stretched out in front of me, the grass neatly trimmed, the flower beds vibrant with color, and the gravel driveway sparkling in the sunlight, all of it a testament to years of care and stewardship that could not be disputed or overshadowed by the overreach that had attempted to challenge it. Brenda remained near the edge of the driveway, her posture shifted from one of assertive authority to a more contemplative stance, acknowledging, if only silently, the thoroughness and legitimacy of the response she had faced. The air was filled with the subtle fragrances of pine, cut grass, and the faint metallic tang of the mailbox post, carrying a sensory reminder of the environment I had carefully observed and protected throughout the day. I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, clean air that carried the hum of distant activity from the neighboring properties, each sound grounding me further in the reality that law, preparation, and observation had restored order without haste or excess. The windows reflected the sunlight, casting a pattern of light and shadow across the interior and exterior, a visual testament to the transparency, clarity, and fairness that had guided every action. I walked slowly across the porch, noting the angle of the sun on the roof shingles, the way the shadows shifted with the movement of time, and the subtle shimmer of light on the polished surfaces, all reinforcing the permanence and legitimacy of the property and its rightful management. Inside, the study remained orderly, the documents and correspondence arranged with precision, ready for any future scrutiny or challenge, a tangible representation of diligence, patience, and lawful preparation. The distant calls of birds, the faint hum of a passing vehicle, and the gentle rustle of leaves created a soundtrack of normalcy and continuity, a reminder that the property was once again secure, the authority rightly established, and the environment stabilized. I traced my fingers along the railing, feeling the smooth wood beneath my touch, reflecting on the process that had led to this moment, careful observation, methodical preparation, and the unwavering application of law and principle. Each decision, each documented observation, and each strategic choice had converged to produce an outcome that was clear, precise, and fully aligned with justice and order. The sunlight continued to climb, warming the surfaces it touched, highlighting the details of the yard, the house, and the surrounding landscape, creating a sense of completeness and resolution. I allowed myself a moment to observe the scene in its entirety, the property calm, orderly, and firmly under rightful stewardship, the earlier tension replaced by a quiet satisfaction that justice had been achieved. Every scent, sound, and detail combined to affirm the restoration of balance, demonstrating that knowledge, preparation, and measured action could overcome presumption, authority misapplied, and challenge, and that the rightful stewardship of property and law was both undeniable and inevitable.